recording in progress, everyone, just so you know. So we have Salma here from Harvard University, although she's not actually at Harvard at the moment, she is overseas. We have Sidney Omelon from McGill University. We have Kelly Miller from Harvard, down there outside with the blue sky behind her. And also helping out Michael Dugdale from John Abbott College and from SALTISE. So Matt's going to start us off, and I will just stay in the background till I'm muted.
And Dan Ferguson now as well, but he's not presenting.
Oh, sorry, Dan, of course. I never actually added you to the slides. Dan?
Yep, I did just now.
Very good. Okay, and Dan Ferguson from Purdue University. Matt and Dan are both from Purdue.
And now I'm fighting to get this to present correctly. Hold on. There we go. All right. All right, welcome. It is a team effort, and we'll do our best to watch the chat for any questions that come along. The general breakdown of the workshop is you got a preview of the fact that there's some serious interaction happening later. Before that, we'll have a little context in addition to some case studies of the use of this system before we get to that. So let's get into it. As a brief background, as you saw in the videos ahead of time, if you did watch those, the CATME team tool system is it's a comprehensive system for managing teams in the academic setting, and in particular, it has two very significant features in addition to some smaller ones. The first of those is the team formation system called Teammaker. It's used to make teams using instructor-specified criteria. It has the ability to group students according to being similar on a criterion or dissimilar on a criterion, as well as a special feature of not outnumbering certain special populations. The criteria can be weighted on a +5, -5 spectrum. And the algorithm optimizes the fit of the worst fitting team. And the importance of that is that it never creates truly horrific teams, even though they make the average better. So it doesn't ever sacrifice students just to get the average up. And then, sorry, there's a very loud cat upset that it's not in my room. The second major feature is a peer evaluation system that was developed scientifically. But it doesn't necessarily match all the models of teamwork that you might have seen, because it is a behaviorally anchored system. So it only includes things that can be observed by teammates and reported. So that means it's missing certain aspects of teamwork that are inside a person's head, but not visible. And that system allows an instructor to create and administrate peer evaluations, and it post-processes that information in order to analyze both student peer evaluations and self-evaluations and identify certain key features of those. And so you'll see those in discussion and how they're used with the upcoming case studies. So the only other thing I wanted to share is the way that the scientific model is set up. It has these 5 factors. And again, hopefully you saw this in the online videos ahead of time, but briefly, contributing to the team's work is effort. Interacting with teammates is, in students' words, don't be a jerk. Having relevant knowledge, skills, and abilities, which is what KSA stands for, is in students' words, is don't be stupid, or at least don't act stupid. And then finally, expecting quality and keeping the team on track are more advanced skills that especially novice team members don't necessarily acknowledge those readily, but they are important, and we keep them in the model to teach them. Expecting quality is is voicing the opinion that the group can do a good job and expecting it to do a good job. And keeping the team on track is about monitoring the progress of the team toward its goals, which could mean monitoring teammates' progress, but it also would include monitoring external conditions. And so with that, I acknowledge that the development of the system and much of its growth has been sponsored by the National Science Foundation in the United States. And I will make sure that I have the chat back open again. If there are any chat questions, I don't see any. So I will turn it over to Sidney.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks for your interest in this incredible software. I thought I'd tell a little story of why I'm here and why I am so thrilled to be using this as I teach the capstone design course in materials engineering at McGill. So I was fortunate when I went to undergrad and was a little chemical engineering baby person. We had one very forward-thinking professor who came from industry and mindfully put us in groups. We had lots of different group projects in undergrad, never with the same people, and every group was dysfunctional to the point where we thought, this is purposeful. So we actually went to this professor at the end of our studies and said, why was every team project put together with groups of people who weren't friends, who didn't get along? And he said, you don't get to choose who you work with in industry. We thought you'd get used to this now. And that lesson stuck with me, and it benefited me incredibly when I began to work in industry, which I did for a few years, and now I'm back. So that message stuck. And I saw what students can learn when they are in a somewhat mindful grouping with some kind of interaction and frame to help them become better team players. Because I personally benefited, and so therefore I wish to continue. So when I came back to academia, I was excited to be given the capstone design course here, and thought, you know, I should be mindful as well, because it's a good thing to give to the students, to give them these team skills. So the first question is, how do you set them? And when I showed up, I was given a syllabus, go. So I had no idea who the students were. I had no idea what was going on. And then luckily ran into Dan Ferguson at the coffee table at the Canadian Engineering Association conference. And he told me about this software, and boom, light went on. So I'm here to tell you how and why I use it and why I'm so thankful it exists. So one is, when you're given a whole batch of new students, how do I put them into teams? So I give them the survey, which you will also do. Pre-pandemic, students asked, why do we put time zone? But in the pandemic, it's been very helpful to know where students are in time zones, because I use that to put them into groups accordingly. Also, I make sure that no female is stranded. And that has come back to me with students saying, thank you so much, because normally there's only one female per team and it's terrible. So when there's two of them, that's a wonderful synergistic thing. And you probably already know all about that. Anyways, as meaning students that have female characteristics typically are given the, we're going to manage and be the secretaries. So when there's two of them, they share that role and they appreciate it. GPA I use somewhat, because GPA doesn't always indicate your team abilities or your KSAs or your willingness to use them. Schedule is important as well, more for pre-pandemic than pandemic. If you have an off-campus job, I find this is very helpful to be mindful of that when putting teams together. And also I use our department is very diverse, so I ask them what subject they're interested in, so I can bin students according to their interest, which means they're probably more motivated to contribute to the project. Now, having said this, I know some students try and game the system, but overall the feedback I have had, I've used it for 3 years now, is that they really appreciate how it's motivating the system to be fair about creating teams and then also following teams. Next slide, please. So how I use CATME. Before I came back to industry, an engineer I worked with said, could you please read this article and bring it to university with you? So I encourage you all also to read this, Teaching Professional Skills to Engineering Students Before They Graduate. I give this paper to my students, I ask them to read it, and then we discuss it in class. Next slide, please. So there's a survey, and I asked the students, oh, it didn't show up. Okay, so I thought it was gonna be a roll through. Oh, yep, oh, that's it, right, good, stay there. So I asked the students, for these characteristics, a survey was given to industry. In particular, this survey was about giving the survey to engineering graduates within 10 years of graduating from a Midwestern university, and to say how important these competencies are for your professional experience. Next slide should show the answer. Yeah, so team skills number one. And then it goes on to skills of problem solving and oral written skills. Next slide shows the next survey, which is given to another group, the employers of the engineers. How important is each of these skills? Next slide. The answer is, again, team skills is up in top 3. It's on the podium, but also communication skills is important and problem solving. And then the last survey, next slide, is specific to the aerospace industry, which is some students in materials engineering go there. And the question is the same idea, which are important for entry-level engineers. Next slide. And you can see here, ethics is first, followed by, we have learning to learn and problem solving. So I use this paper as a chance to engage students in the thought that these skills we're going to develop by working in teams are important. Next slide. So how I use this is, one, to put teams together, which we'll do today. But also what I really, really appreciate about this software is it gives the students a chance to give peer and self-reflection feedback to themselves and others. So here I've just put an example, we'll go into this in the workshop, of how students are asked. In this case, I've highlighted interacting with teammates. How do they think they interact with teammates? And how do they think their teammates interact with the team? Why do I really like this? What I really like about this particular presentation is if it's used repeatedly with students, which I have now done, they are learning what skill sets are important, what behaviors are considered good or middle or low performing behaviors. So in a way, if they're interested, so I have self-directed there, they're learning the phraseology, the words, the behaviors that are expected for good team players in industry. So even if the professor can't touch on it, or they don't have any other way to sort of have feedback, if they're not doing co-op jobs or things, they can get a framework of what a good team player, how a good team player behaves professionally. So for this reason, I really appreciate the peer and self-evaluation. Next slide. Here also is another gem of this software. I tried to do this myself on Excel, and it took me days and days and days to collect and then give the feedback to the students, because before I knew CATME existed, I used this idea of these different competencies and gave students surveys so they could give each other feedback halfway through their design projects to see who was doing well and who wasn't. But this is an infinity number of hours. With CATME, this all happens, and there's magic, better than what I could do with Excel. So what you're looking at here is what professors would see, which is for the different students, IDs blanked out, how are they rating each other and themselves? And the magic is if you have a very large class, you can quickly look and see, is there a team that's in trouble or a team that's doing quite well? So I have an example of a team who's doing fairly well. We have no obvious flags, someone who's a high performer. And below you can see there are some issues, which we'll go into as we go into the workshop. So far in using this for 3 years, what I see myself in class has always been reflected, what I see in CATME. And the students who are in trouble often will communicate with me. And I already know before they communicate with me because I've seen from this. So I use this to gauge what's happening and to intervene when required. But also very important is that I use this to give an indication to myself to justify tuning of grades that I do. It's not the only factor I use. Some people will use this adjustment factor directly for grade modification, but if students know that, they start to pressure each other. So I tell the students I don't use it directly. It's one of many tools I use to do an individual adjustment. And there's a question I see, are the rows here individual students? Yes. So each row is an individual student, and they are grouped together in the groups that CATME figures out. There's also room for manual adjustment, which I do as well. So that's where I'm super thrilled with using this software. I find it engages great discussions. It also gives a chance for students to give feedback to each other in a written format that I choose to be non-anonymous, which scares the students, but then I tell them it's best place to practice. How do you give professional feedback to each other is here. No one's gonna get fired. Can all students see each other's? Yes, they can. There's a format to see how they were rated by others. And then yes, so that will be, I'm going to pass that on to the boss for these kinds of technical questions. Oh, Matt, Ohland, to everyone. Yes, okay, you're answering. Thank you, Matt. That's my last slide, I think. So I thank you for your time. And I'm looking forward to the other users of CATME and their feedback.
I guess it's my turn. Do we have any questions for Sidney before I move on? We will be sharing articles, I guess, and there are some references at the end of the presentation. So hello everyone, thank you so much for allowing me this time to speak to you today. My name is Salma. Kelly and I work together in the Learning Incubator at Harvard. The Learning Incubator is a program that allows professors at Harvard to take a semester off, where we help them to rethink how they're teaching and think about the goals for the classes, and to be very intentional about the learning experiences that they want their students to go through. So part of the goals of our program is enabling active learning. We use backward design, which in fancy terms, we have goals for each lesson and objectives for the course. We try very hard to activate prior knowledge before the class begins altogether and before each lesson. And we try to challenge students with activities in class that enable them to strengthen these connections of knowledge and to actually enable them to reflect and build on what they've learned outside of the class. We also value a lot, just like Sidney have discussed, we value a lot teaching and enabling collaboration and teamwork. And most of the professors we work with these days have also realized what has been discussed already, which is you almost never leave school or leave college and go work by yourself in some basement, whatever. You're always working within a team. So it should be part of our proactive to actually teach students how to work well together in teams. We also, especially this past year, we really tried very hard to create community and to increase student engagement. And we find that CATME really helped us, and group work really helps us with that goal. How it looks like, and especially this is for introductory courses. So the two examples I'm going to be discussing today focus on freshman, sophomore level introductory courses, just to give you a flavor of how it's used. Small learning communities, small learning teams, a lot of out-of-class preparation. We use tools like Perusal and Learning Analytics, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And then we try to challenge them with in-class group activities and reflections. Sometimes these are projects, sometimes these are discovery things, sometimes they're just very hard problems that they need to solve together. Next, please, Matt. So we did find, from my experience, I started 4 years ago in Learning Incubator, CATME has been a lifesaver. Again, I found Dan, and Dan was very patient to teach me how to use it. And later on, Kelly also improved my skills with this tool. It's been very effective in actually helping me reach the goals that we set out for ourselves in the Learning Incubator, in terms of collaboration, effective team, becoming an effective team member, and learning how to negotiate, communicate difficult interactions, and basically build an infrastructure where active learning in groups can actually work well. One thing that I have to emphasize is the adjustment factor for CATME. This is, I mean, CATME is magic, because it takes me about 15 minutes to literally create a class, upload a CSV file to form groups, and get going with it. So it takes absolutely no effort. As Sidney said, when we try to do that on our own, there's just a lot of, it's madness. CATME just seamlessly does all that for you, in addition to creating this adjustment factor, which is a number or two, depending on which one you want to choose, where you look at, it's almost like a factor that you can multiply by a grade that reflects how the students evaluated this particular student, or how they evaluate the student and how they reflected on themselves. You can actually include the person's own reflection or not in that factor. Now, since we value this, and since this is a very important tool in actually achieving some of the active learning goals that we have for ourselves, you have to put your money where your mouth is, or whatever is the expression, or your mouth where the money is, whatever it is. I really suggest that you go from minimum 10% of whatever that grade is that you get from CATME on peer evaluation. I go sometimes for 20%, because I really find that this helps students to really value their interaction in groups and to really reflect hard on how they're working together. Okay, I was just looking at the chat for a minute. Is there anything that requires? Okay, I'm actually not going to pay attention to the chat for now, because my presentation is a little over, and I should probably just focus on that.
We'll get your attention if there's anything you need to answer there.
Okay, thank you, Matt. So next slide, please. So these two courses that I was thinking about that I worked with professors on were very specific ones that dealt with introductory material in computation. One was a very straightforward second level programming course that teaches abstraction, and the other one was a course that teaches computation as a tool to solve engineering problems. Both of these courses did not have a textbook. These professors actually had very specific notes that they've developed over the years that are very much to the point of what the student needs in order to get to do the hard problems in class. The reading was put on a tool called Perusal. You can look it up later on, but it's actually a tool that allows students to interact and answer each other's questions while deciphering these notes. And then from Perusal, you get this thing called a confusion report, which gives you a bunch of salient questions that the students are still struggling with. Now, most professors that I worked with that use this format do not lecture, or they just use the questions from Perusal to address any confusions before they move on to the activity. Sometimes there's mini lectures just in case you want to actually build on some of the stuff that you're having them prepare ahead of class. But what we actually also do is something called Readiness Assurance. So we're trying to teach students how to be independent learners, how to come very well prepared for class in order to be an effective team member so you can solve a challenging problem together. The Readiness Assurance, we use another tool called Learning Catalytics, another thing you can look up later. But basically, they take this quiz with very low stakes individually, and then they come to class and they try to solve the problem together. We put students in groups of 4. In the computer science course, we have them work together in groups of 2, and then they rotate with only one driver. So you're coding while somebody's watching, and then you switch. In this other course that's focused on computation, the professor wanted to go to 6 people. We're like, that's too much. People can sort of hide and whatever. So we settled on 4 to 5 students. We do 3 rounds of peer evaluation with no repeat interaction. And unlike Sidney, we actually do an anonymous feedback. You actually have the option in CATME. And what we want is for students to basically, we give them a lot of information and a lot of talking points, about how to give constructive feedback. So, and we actually, as instructors, have the chance to look at their feedback before we release it in case, and I've never actually faced that, in case there's anything that's not a constructive feedback. But what this allows them is to learn in one learning community for a few weeks, get feedback, and then without any baggage or hard feelings or whatever, move on to the next group and try better, and then so on and so forth. However, that's not to discredit this idea of having students in one group for the whole semester, and if you have issues, that's part of your learning. You need to learn how to deal with those issues. So you give them the peer evaluations every 3 weeks, they get the feedback, and they have to implement it within the same group. It depends on what you want to accomplish in the course. For a capstone's project, that's very important because that mimics what happens in industry. Next slide, please, Matt. So what we do in those classes is we give surveys ahead of the class. And the nice thing about CATME, by the way, is that we sort of, Kelly and I, like jumped into CATME and we used it for only this very specific need that we had, which is the peer evaluation. We did our own surveys, we did our own groupings outside of CATME. However, having talked to our colleagues for the past few weeks, we're very excited to learn the grouping mechanisms within CATME because they seem to be much more flexible and have a lot of different options that we never considered. But in the past, what we did is we gave surveys to students where they self-identify about who they are and whatever and what their interests are, etc. I also, for these 2 particular classes, asked them to reflect on, it's somewhat self-efficacy type question, where reflect on your ability and your confidence in your ability to answer the following questions. So we don't ask them to actually answer questions, we just ask them to tell us what they think, how comfortable they are with certain questions on programming and math. And then we actually use that information later on to do our grouping. It evolves over time. Sometimes we actually use how they are progressing in the class to decide on which students work with which students as the grouping is evolving. You can also do, instead of this survey where you're asking students about their programming level and their math level for these particular classes, you can also do one active review at the very top of the class where you're checking for their readiness and whether they really have the prerequisites for the course. Students work on it on their own, they get a tiny little grade for that, and then they work together in a group and they solve it. You can look at this individual part and use that to decide how you want to group students based on their readiness for the course in general. And then at the end of the active review, you get to figure out where your students are at and figure out whether you want to do a whole class review on some topics or not. Next slide, please. So as Sidney have talked about, CATME comes back with some gems. For example, you have students who have high confidence, students who have low confidence. You have cliques, definitely have to deal with cliques, and definitely have to deal with low. A student who is underconfident, the other students deal with it. So their feedback comes back, you know, you're great, I wish you talked more often, etc. I really appreciate your comments, etc. You don't have to deal with the under per se, maybe a little encouragement, but the other students sort of give that feedback. The overconfident, I don't talk to them, life deals with them, I guess, at some point. But the cliques and the low, definitely students to actually communicate with at some point and try to figure out what is going on. And these cliques are bad. They really manifest problems that we have in our society having to do with all kinds of things that are real and that the classroom still manifests, and therefore we still have to deal with them. Next slide, please, Matt. And I don't have time to go through all of these reflections, but I love reading them because to me, you know, being mindful and internalizing what you're doing and all of that, we're all doing that. We're writing in our diaries, we're doing all these reflections on our teaching, etc. We are allowing our students actually to reflect on how they are working in this group, which is not just about the behavior. When it really also relates to how prepared they are, and if they're doing their part in being prepared to come to the group and do all this and do what is required. The self-reflections are always very sweet to read because they're really thinking hard about how to be a better group member, which is wonderful. The questions are great. I can't recommend them anymore. Next slide, please. CATME also have a whole bunch of surveys that are additional. In addition to the dimensions that Matt talked about, they have a whole bunch of other questions that you can administer. What I found incredibly helpful is something called the psychological safety questionnaire. And there is where, like, for example, this student that is way below the average of the psychological safety reported for the class, this is definitely a student I need to talk to. This is a student that's struggling, that's having a hard time. And these questions have been validated, and the research has shown to immediately highlight a dysfunctional team. And there's a lot more other surveys. We'll probably go over them in the workshop, but this particular one, Dan recommended, and I can't recommend it anymore, more than this. Matt, next one, please. Okay, so Kelly and I have used a program called GroupEng. It's a very simple Python script. But again, I'm very, very, very excited to start using the Teammaker inside CATME. But basically, you can, in grouping, distribute team one. So team one could be, you know, I'm in team number 3. This means I don't want the teams to actually, actually I don't probably need to talk to you about the details of GroupEng because we don't want you to use GroupEng per se, but you're trying to not cluster gender. So for me, anybody who does not identify as male is the other, and those I don't want them to be separated, working alone within a group of all males. Same thing with identity in terms of race. For this particular grouping, I wanted to balance math and programming, meaning I wanted groups to have the same average grade of math and programming. Distributed year in this case, and all of these rules, they have their equivalent in CATME, by the way. You can, for this particular grouping, I wanted a freshman, sophomore, whatever. I didn't want a whole group of only freshmen and only sophomore. I wanted to have it sort of a diverse group. And again, CATME is very capable of doing that. Next slide, please. So for example, for this AM10 class, I had 3 different criteria for how I wanted to do grouping at the 3 different stages. For module 1, I wanted to leverage strong students because I wanted to level the field. We wanted everybody to be on the same level of math and computation so that the next module, we can take them to the next level. So basically, I distributed any student that had ranked high on math and programming as much as I can. And these students, I want to say something about the power of narrative and setting class values. Most students get bored when they know things inside out and like, why am I in this group where nobody, you know, I know everything, they don't know anything, etc. And I came across some research on the illusion of explanatory theory and self-explanatory theory, whatever. And I discussed that with students. And basically, you don't know what you know until you start explaining it to someone. You think you know how this proof works, but it's not until you explain it to someone else that you find the holes in your knowledge. So we're doing you a favor by allowing you to actually help others in getting them to the same level. So we set that tone in the beginning so that this leveling of the field, they get a little bit of a confidence boost and they don't mind sort of working with these simpler problems to elevate everybody to the same level. In module 2, I wanted balanced groups, so I basically distributed all these students, actually balanced the grade for math and computation for the different groups. And in module 3, for this particular class, I wanted self-selected groups. Basically, I wanted students who had similar interests, that wanted to work on the same projects to work together. Anybody who didn't choose a group, we used our grouping tool to actually put students who are at the same level together. So students who are really strong in math and computation can go off and do some really complicated projects, and others who are not, you know, at a slower level can actually work on something that they can manage. Anyway, these are just to show you that CATME can provide you with a mechanism to do the grouping and encourage teamwork depending on your goals for the class. For this class, I had these 3 goals for each of the modules, and CATME was able to help me with all of this. One thing I want to say is this tool is incredibly easy to use. Use it because it makes your life so much simpler, and it allows you to really innovate and think about what do I want from this grouping? Why is this goal important for me right now? And then boom, you can actually accomplish it by prioritizing different rules for how you want to do the grouping. I hope I didn't go over too much. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Okay, I'm going to talk very briefly about CATME in the context of 2 other courses, separate from the ones that Salma just discussed. Salma and I, as she mentioned, work closely together. So my experiences with CATME mirror everything that was just said and also what was covered by Sidney. So I've spoken about this course a couple of different times in SALTISE presentations. This is the course, Applied Physics 50, that got me using CATME. It's a large introductory physics class that is offered in the School of Engineering at Harvard. It's completely project and team-based. So the students are organized into groups of 4 or 5 for an entire semester. And they're doing all of the class activities and projects in the context of those teams. And all of the assessment is done in teams. And so making good groups is the most important thing in terms of the students' experience in the course, because everything is done as part of a group. So the way the course is structured is the students are working on 3 month-long projects that involve like building machines where they're studying the underlying physics of those machines. And what we do is we group the students we put the students in one group for project 1, and then we reorganize them into a new group for project 2, and then a new group for project 3. So they're working in 3 different groups over the course of the semester. And if you go, Matt, to the next slide, this is a list of the criteria that we use to form the groups. So unlike the example that Salma just gave, where the clusters were sort of based on interests or abilities, our goal when we're making groups for Applied Physics 50 is to make the teams as even as possible, so that there's at least the perception of equity, because the assessment is so tied to the groups. So, I mean, we use a lot of performance-based metrics, like we have the students do the FCI or the CSEM. And so we use that as one of the inputs for making sure that the teams have about the same average physics background knowledge. We use, as the course progresses, we use exam performance, again, to sort of make the groups more equitable. Because we want the students to not be working with the same people twice, we use like what membership from their previous team as one of the inputs to make sure that no two students are working together twice. And then we have some other surveys similar to what Salma just said, like, to try to make sure that we've got some diversity with respect to learning styles and student concentrations, and like a diversity of freshmen, sophomores, seniors, that kind of thing. So yeah, so that's Applied Physics 50. Another course, if you go to the next slide, another course that we've been using CATME in is a general education. So at Harvard, there are these courses called general education courses. They're sort of like breadth requirements in the Canadian system. Basically, they're like checking boxes. The students have to take like a certain number of like courses in each of these categories. So I teach this class, How Music Works, Engineering in the Acoustical World. And this is a flipped, this year, online project-based course. The way it works, or the way we structured it, is students watched a lecture video before coming to a synchronous Zoom class where we just ran activities that tried to like reinforce the content that they had been exposed to in the videos before coming to the Zoom sessions. And a huge problem with this structure is that is engagement, right? It's keeping students engaged on Zoom. The synchronous activities were, I mean, we didn't really assess the students at all during the activities. And I mean, one of the driving sort of motivators for student engagement is assessment. And so we use CATME as a way. So basically we divided students into breakout rooms using like the grouping mechanism. And then at the end of each third of the course, we had students evaluate the other students in their breakout room. And so really that was the only like form of assessment that that we had for the synchronous sessions. And we found that it really, really helped this, because students knew that they were going to be evaluated by the other students in their breakout room. It really helped them stay on track and at least try to be engaged, which is, as we all know, difficult on Zoom. So if we go to the next slide. So yeah, this is what I basically just said. In person, the class, obviously, like, we had students working, that's the picture on the left. We had students working like face to face on these projects, these acoustical projects, but with the necessity of everything being online, we used CATME to organize the breakout rooms and then to have basically the assessment of engagement. So these two courses are very, the two, Applied Physics 50 and the General Education class are very different. The Applied Physics 50 is a required course, the Gen Ed class is an elective. So the kind of grouping criteria that was used in the elective was not, we didn't care so much about equity, because like the students weren't being assessed in the context of the groups, except from the engagement point of view. We cared about having the groups diverse, like there were many different reasons why students took this particular general education class. Some of them were interested in the physics aspect of it. Some of them were interested in the engineering aspect. Some of them were interested in the music. And we had them take a survey at the beginning of the semester that kind of polled like their general, like which aspect of the course were they most interested in. And then we made the breakout rooms so that they were like, there was a sort of smattering of different types of people, so that they would have a more like enriched experience, like discussing the activities. So those are two different, like sort of very, very different courses, and just a brief overview of how we use CATME. Before CATME came along, we had all sorts of different things that we were trying. We had a homemade system for a little while that was a total disaster. It kept crashing. Then we turned to Google Forms, which worked pretty well, but it was just incredibly time consuming, especially like disseminating the information at the end. I think this is something that I can't emphasize enough with CATME, is like, once all of the data is in the system, you literally, as the instructor, just have to click a button, release to students, and the information gets disseminated. The feedback, which is the most important part of CATME, like get the students getting the feedback. And this is something I forgot to mention with Applied Physics 50. The reason why we put students on different teams for different projects is because we wanted at the end of project 1, we released the feedback from the peers, and then we wanted those students to use that feedback to inform their behavior for project 2, right? And then the feedback at the end of project 2 to inform their behavior for project 3. And that dissemination of feedback is like the best. I mean, it's great for feedback for the instructors, but also feedback for the students, in terms of like knowing what they could improve on, and then using that information immediately in another kind of team experience, I think is like, it's just incredible. And CATME makes that so easy. The Google Forms, we just couldn't, once we had all the information, we couldn't like figure out a way of getting it to the students in a kind of seamless way. So anyway, those are my experiences with CATME. I could talk for more, but I want to leave some time for questions and for discussion before we move on to the next part of this workshop. Yeah, so Carolyn just asked for the Gen Ed class, groups were changed every third of the semester, and that was just to mix it up a little bit so that the students would get, just to freshen up the experience, so that students would get exposed to different people. Are there any other questions? You don't have to ask in the chat. You can just, I don't know, raise your hand, or let me make it so that I can see everyone. Does anyone have any questions or
Carolyn just briefly asked if projects are group or individual.
Projects in that particular class were also groups. It was less like formalized than Applied Physics 50. They got to pick so the projects in the Gen Ed class were sort of decoupled from the breakout rooms, the breakout room groups. So, and this was just sort of out of necessity, because some students were like physically together on campus and other students were obviously remote. So we let them pick, for the projects, we let them pick their own groups.
We did not use CATME for the project groups.
We didn't use CATME for the project groups in the Gen Ed class. In Applied Physics 50, we use CATME for everything. Yeah. How much does a license cost? That's a good question. Is it, Matt, you probably know. I think it's like $2 per student.
Right, so it's approximately $2 per student. It's operating as a nonprofit within Purdue University, and that's $2 per student per year. But we're trying to operate with price ranges to make it both easier for people to handle and plan. But yeah, the sort of the target value is about $2 per student per year. We're negotiating with our cost accounting people right now as to whether that number works.
I can send a link to the licensing site help thing that has the prices.
Thanks.
I think just paying attention to the time, this is our time to take a short break. If there are still more questions, you will have time to ask them for sure. Don't worry, there will be plenty of places allocated for discussion. But we'd like to just take a 5-minute break, give everyone a chance to do whatever it is you need to do that's not glued in front of your computer. I've got 10:18, that puts us back at 10:23. It's very specific. You could come at 10:25 if you want. Yeah, Matt's typed 10:25. Perfect. And then we'll move on to forming teams.
We're back.
I was just checking that.
Well, it's 10:25, so everyone should be back. And I was fielding a message and trying to figure out someone needs to leave early, and I'm trying to figure out what the impact will be on the activity later. I think we're gonna be fine. All right. Okay, so I don't see any new questions. Let's proceed. This is where this becomes a little bit more seat of the pants, but we're going to make it work. What I'll do is I'll just quickly show you how to set up a Teammaker survey, because I'll be setting one up for the activity that we're doing today. And there's a link in that we need to move to the chat. Hold on. Do I still have it to paste? I don't. That link should do it. That link should take you to a Google Sheet. In that sheet are the instructions that were sent to people by email ahead of time, with login instructions and special instructions as well for what happens, and we'll talk more about those in a moment. So let me, I'm going to pull over another window, and I'm going to show you logging into the system and setting up a Teammaker survey for this part of the discussion. So this is what the interface looks like when you're logged in as an instructor. And it's also possible to have an account that allows you to log in as a student as well, if you want to practice with the system personally. But we also have some demo accounts, the ones that you're using today, that are useful for that purpose. So it begins by creating a class. So here I'll create a SALTISE workshop. And it's already anticipated that it's summer and that it's a lab. We'll call it a seminar, I guess. And I'll turn this off for now. Actually, we will get that one on, because you want to see what that looks like. The institution is going to be SALTISE. And it's going to say, I don't know that institution, and we're going to say that's fine for now. And the time zone setting is important when considering when the survey will open and close, as well as for how student schedules are interpreted. So as soon as you save that, it opens the possibility of creating an activity. And in this case, we will create a Teammaker activity, which, since we haven't done any before, the system assumes that's the first thing we want to do. But there are some people who do just use the peer evaluation, and that's fine. So creating a Teammaker activity, let me decide what the criteria are. And there's, based on the instructions that I've sent out ahead of time, there are certain ones I need to make sure that I enable. So hold on just a moment. There we go. So I need, I will use the gender and the race question. And I need to have class year. Which is in here somewhere. Class year. And I need to have schedule compatibility, of course, schedule. So schedule compatibility allows forming teams for students who will work outside of class so that they can have compatible schedules. Oh, the link didn't work? Did the second link work?
She's got your email too, so, and it
Okay.
did work for me.
Oh, okay. Weird. And all right, well, so let's just go with those. And when I save that, oh yeah, I didn't give it an activity name. Shame on me. I'll call it just something. Oh, it's not peer evaluation. This is team formation. There we go. In this the start date, it will open at midnight the morning of the day that's shown. So I need to make that a previous day so that it will open immediately. And I will turn off Rater Practice for now because that's relevant only for peer evaluations. And we should be ready to go. Okay, so the next thing is we need to tell who the students are. And so I've created a CSV file, which is specifically for this activity. CSV stands for comma separated values, if you haven't used that before. It's a pretty common format for things like rosters that come for classes. And it's also makes it easy to exchange information with learning management systems. So when I import that list, it shows that I have a number of students. Unfortunately, we ran out of the nicer looking user IDs. So some people will have these ugly demo and user IDs. Sorry about that. Your names won't be as pretty on the screen. And if I save that, among other things, if you are logged into the system now with your fake identity, this survey should appear. As the instructor, I can preview at any time what that survey looks like to any of the participants, which in this case, it'll look the same for all of them. It shows the instructions, which I didn't adjust, and then it shows the survey. Since I'm just previewing, I don't need to do anything here. So I'll just complete and save. So now this is the part where, as the instructor, I can watch as you complete that activity. So before I do that, let me, hold on. Remember that even in the team formation process, some participants have been asked to play specific roles. Don't take it personally based on what you might see was someone's response to the team formation survey or any of the naughtiness they might be trying to perpetrate. We'll discuss all of that in a bit. I see comments, everything's working. Yes, you can add your own questions to the survey. While people are completing the survey, I will show you what that looks like. Oh, we have someone who registered and didn't make the list. Hold on. Let me, I had some spares, so hold on. Wrong file. Let's see. Just need to make sure I know which ones are free. Who was it that needed one? No.
I'm just wondering, I'm not able to see the survey yet. It's prompting me to change my time zone information, which also seems to want a new password.
So I'm in touch with our folks about the new password issue. These accounts shouldn't have changing passwords, but we're going to go with it. Meryl, if you're listening, if you follow the link, you now have an assigned identity.
Can you also assign one? Nicholas has sent a message saying he's also not on the list.
All right, so Nicholas is now in the Google Sheet. Awesome. Oh, I have misspelled Nicholas. I will fix that. All right.
Megan, was
And-
that you who just spoke out, or are you still having a problem?
Yeah, I just, I'm trying to figure out where to log in those details. Like when I'm clicking on the links, maybe I'm clicking on the wrong link, but I'm only seeing SALTISE, a Google Doc with all of the names and passwords.
Okay, hold on. In that Google Doc, there's a link to click on to log into the CATME system.
Oh.
It looks like this.
I see. Thank you.
So now I'm going to refresh my screen. So you can see that 8% of our participants have completed the survey. And if I want to, I can actually see which one that is. I can look at the data that's been submitted so far, including comments, if there are any. Ooh, we're up to 10%. It keeps growing.
Sorry, how was the time zone issue resolved? I'm having that time zone issue.
If you don't change your time zone, by default, it presumes that you're in the same time zone as the instructor. So that'll work fine today.
Okay.
That message is critical, though, when we, especially during the pandemic, when we were forming teams across time zones and trying to make sure their schedules were truly compatible.
Thank you.
So for Christine's question, since you can create your own question, you can absolutely create one that's different. I would like to change that default actually to first year, second year, third year, and so forth. It does get a little confusing for students who may have different sort of chronological time versus time in the curriculum. While we're still, let's see. Oh, fantastic. All right, so Natalie, I'm going to give you a new account to use. Hang on. Where are you? There you are. I'm going to give you demo user, not 0004, but 0005. And unfortunately, that gives you a very ugly sign-in. Oh, actually, demo user 5 is already taken. Hold on. Okay, in the sheet, you have now a new set of credentials. So try again. Sorry about that. Apparently, a few of the passwords have gotten changed on our demo accounts, which because we let everybody use them, we can't stop that from happening.
And Matt, just, to make everyone feel better, like these issues are because we're trying to do it on the fly, right?
Yeah.
It's different when it's your students.
Right. When it's your students, of course, yeah, it definitely goes a lot smoother. Right. Your students only have one identity, so you're not trying to manage a fake one. All right, we're up to 53% so far. So while we're still, people are still finishing that survey, I did want to show you the this add your own questions possibility. So this is a list of all of the different questions that I've ever asked on a survey. Well, actually, it's all the ones that are built into the system plus the ones that I've added. But it's possible to either search questions that have been asked by other people, which sometimes is a helpful starting point, and then you can copy and edit those, or you can just add a question of your own, which also allows for, once you've first created a question, there are advanced features. And those advanced features allow things like being able to upload the question and so forth. So, and also to be able to set a default response. Do students typically have, so it's perfectly safe to have students complete surveys in class, but what we do in first year engineering actually at Purdue is we release the survey ahead of the semester, ahead of the term, and most students have completed it by the time term has begun. The one thing I will point out is that when it comes to the peer evaluation surveys, it's much more important to make sure students do that separately so that they don't look over each other's shoulders. And Natalie, I'm sending you your new credentials. There you go. That's a username and a password. How do you deal with the add drop period in already formed teams? So, the way I deal with it is we try to form teams only after the add drop period is complete. The system will allow uploading a revised roster repeatedly, especially important if students change which section of a course they're signed up for. After team engagement has begun, obviously it becomes more complicated. And usually what we do is we just make sure that no team ends up so shorthanded that they'll have a problem meeting our objectives. We're at 55%. I need to make one other change. Oh, because I assigned a new user, no wonder I can't, no wonder you can't log in. Hold on a second. I added a new user and I didn't add that person here. So this is what happens if a student adds the course after you've already begun. Instead of updating a new roster, it's possible to do it this way. It is, hold on. The name is, I believe, demo 006 and last name, and I have no idea. The student ID is a number that is not used by the system. It's just for your tracking purposes. And save. Now, Natalie, it should work for you. Sorry about that. Right, and back to here. We're up to 60%. We're almost there. If anyone else is having troubles setting theirs up, I think some of these may be absent people, actually.
Yeah.
It occurs to me.
Seeing as we have 35 participants, there's going to be several missing. I'm just, Emily, I saw you just rejoined. Have you been able to do the survey? Do you need any info?
I think so. I was able to get the survey going. I did it. It says that my survey has gone through. Sorry about that. I had an internet blip.
No, that's okay. I just wasn't sure how long you've been absent for.
Yeah, not very long.
There was a question about connecting to the student information system. It is not yet possible. We have some hooks into some learning management systems, but it doesn't hook directly into the student information system. All right. Well, especially for this activity, you'll see how it handles people with missing responses. I don't see anyone at the moment in the chat who's concerned that they haven't been able to complete that yet. So let me go ahead with this process. Once I have received hopefully as many responses as I will get, usually as you can see, my class from the spring had 95% response rate. When I go to this view, it shows me all of the student responses, and as well, it shows me the confidential comments. And these are truly confidential. Only the instructor will see these. Some of these are very important to read, right? So, everything's working so far. Thanks for the survey, right? And then we get to, right? Shay says, I really just want to do this project on my own. Has an awesome background, but really just people don't listen to Shay. Here's another, right? I take my work very seriously, like only put me in a group with people who take their work seriously. I've had to take institutional action in some cases based on what I've read in these comments. One young woman in the comments revealed that she didn't want to be placed in a team with either of two young men in my class because they were stalking her. And so, so anything can show up in here. It's critical that someone has to review these comments. Great, I see that Natalie did get in, awesome. All right, and so once we see that, we also see a warning up here. So it tells me that Shay, as a feature of the fact that Shay is not interested in working in a team, Shay has said, you know what, I have no time for team interaction. It gives this flag if less than 20% of a student's schedulable time is available for team interaction. And in addition to making it difficult to put the student in a team with a compatible schedule, it is also a signal, right, typically to an instructor that either Shay really doesn't have time to do participate in your class and the team activity you expect, or that Shay is saying, as Shay in this case has verbalized, that Shay wants nothing to do with working in a team. So once we review this and we go to make teams, then what it does is it shows us both a summary of responses and it allows us to set the criteria that we're interested in. So in this case, we have a reasonable distribution of males and females. So it makes it easy to consider the aspect of not outnumbering females as a good criterion. When it comes to race ethnicity, that looks fine too. The don't outnumber is the criterion that Sidney described of making sure that people who tend to be marginalized by other people, by majority populations, aren't isolated is the goal. Up at the top, there's a team size criterion. There's no single optimum team size that is determined based on your objectives and in some cases on your classroom geometry. But we'll go with a maximum team size of 4, which means it will never create a team size of more than 4. And so it will have as many at 4 as it can, and then the rest of the teams will have 3. The summary of schedule availability is not particularly helpful. You'll notice that it's not possible to form teams of people with dissimilar schedules because we decided that was pathological. And then finally, class year, it's typically nice to group students that are similar based on class year, so that in my case, in a class that is intended for first year students, if students are making up that class later as seniors, they generally have a fairly low tolerance for working with students who are first year students, new beginners. So we have a bunch of responses, and I've set my criteria. And so when I say make teams, this is where the algorithm attempts to satisfy my criteria, but optimizing the fit of the worst fitting team. And it quickly comes up with a set of teams. And it looks like it actually defeated the people who were trying to, oh no, it put 3 of the people who were trying to be on a team together have succeeded. And so you'll see that these answers match perfectly, and these answers match perfectly, and these answers match perfectly, and the schedules match perfectly, except for the fact that someone with 100% busy schedule has gotten onto that team. So typically, when people want to be on a team together, if they figure out that you're using certain criteria, they'll try to match up their criteria so that something like this will happen, and is typically noticeable when there are a whole bunch of responses that match like that, right? Especially in the case here where we have 3 that have responded as doctoral students in what might have been a first year class. Other than that, and many of these teams will be people who responded just freely. So we have people with very, very compatible schedules, somewhat less compatible schedules. Let me see if I can find a very poorly compatible schedule. Oh, other than that one, there isn't one. All right. So that's one of the things that I always review, is to review how the schedule compatibility is looking. Everyone's really free. This is fantastic. All right. Among the other features that are in here, very briefly, is the ability to force a team together, to force students to be paired, to force students to be separated, and then Dan mentioned in the chat earlier that we can separate everyone who's currently on a team. Let's see, what happens if the no response rate for multiple questions are very high? So the algorithm essentially ignores people in the scoring process who don't respond either entirely or to a single question. And I think, does that answer all the questions? I see other people are keeping up with the chat as well, which is great. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and show you what happens when I save teams, but we're actually going to use a different set of teams for the next exercise anyway. So when I try to save the teams, it just suggests a bunch of team numbers, and when I save those, it will release those 2 people. I'll preview this so you see. This is what Shay would see. Is Shay, even though you didn't want to be on a team, I put you on a team anyway, and this is what your team looks like. It gives them their team members' names and email addresses so they can get in contact immediately, and it shows them a schedule grid, including if they hover, they can find out who is available and who, and therefore who is not available at any given time. And yes, you can move students around. Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but that feature is there. You can, if you edit a student, you can move them from one team to another. Yeah, great question. So let me get back to, oh, there it is. When it comes to the peer evaluation system, let me just show you a little bit about some other parts of the system. And I think a number of things that I was going to mention here have been covered now. So I'll just briefly show this one. So because any skill to learn requires practice, and in this case, because one of the significant barriers to peer evaluation is peer pressure, the system has a rating practice system where a verbal description is given of a student's behavior, and then students are expected to rate those scenarios, but these are fake people. And so it allows students to practice using the instrument in the absence of any kind of peer pressure. As you see, there's a reveal answers button that gives students feedback immediately on exactly how they did on rating this particular dimension for this particular student who's shown. I mentioned in the chat earlier, students never see the numbers that we were looking at. That's only an instructor view. So this is the feedback a student would receive. So in this case, the student said it received this feedback. It reminded them that you said you contributed sort of the expected level of effort. Your teammates said that you contributed something above those expectations, but that has to be placed in context of the team's ratings overall, because it's always possible that the team is inflating all of their ratings. And in this particular case, the student receives the feedback in the third column that the average rating on effort for the team was in the middle of the scale, which is to say meeting expectations, because I've only shown part of the scale here. So this is actually very positive feedback for the student, right? You said you were meeting expectations. The team on average is meeting expectations, but the team acknowledged you as exceeding those expectations. So that's a sort of a congratulations, yay. I think there's another, somewhere I got a private chat so no one else could see it and respond to it. Oh, weird. Okay, I forgot to put one of the specialty questions in. Oh, sorry. You saw the comment system earlier, which is great. If you read across a row, you can see all of the comments about a particular student. And if you read down a column, you can read all the comments made by a particular student to see if that student is being particularly harsh, or in some cases, particularly vapid, right? If they are giving comments that have no meaning. And this has been discussed earlier, so I'm going to skip this. And so what we're going to do now is have you go into breakout groups and discuss strategies for managing teams. And what that'll do is it'll let you reflect on the content of the workshop, but also to have a team interaction that you can use as the basis for a peer evaluation. So the first part of actually having the discussion should lead to some better questions later on, and also, again, give you the context for the activity to do the actual peer evaluation. So again, you should still be logged in, but the instructions will be new, and I'm going to actually form new teams for the purpose of this activity, which is no problem. And so let me first just show you setting up the peer evaluation survey, which is sort of a no-brainer. So I go into the class here, and I ask for a new activity, and it assumes I want to do a peer evaluation, which, let's see, hold on. I'll call it just peer evaluation. I need to open in the past. I'll ask those 5 questions because we haven't, we're not going to use any of those supplementary ones. But as showed up in the chat, we have a number of other validated instruments that can be used. And here's where you turn on comments and so forth, which can be private to the instructor, shown to the student but de-identified, or in fact, shown to the student identified. As soon as I save that, I could use the teams that we just formed. In this case, I'm not going to, because I want to have some different, I want a different configuration. And I'm hoping it's going to work. I saw another person had to leave for something. It's the problem with a virtual workshop is that people can't stop life from interrupting them. So now when I uploaded that file, because I'm doing a peer evaluation survey, it paid attention to the column that had a team ID in it. And so now everyone is assigned to teams. I do need to, I will once again need to add demo user 5. Hold on. Or demo user 6 rather. Sorry about this. Again, it's the working on the fly part. I need to assign demo user 6 to a team. Hold on, I need to find out what team that Natalie was supposed to be in. All right, good. Natalie gets put into team 7. All right.
The email has a funny thing. You might want to check it.
The chat, you mean? Oh, you meant the email does. Yes, you did. Thank you. And the system didn't like it either. The team ID is too short. Oh, hold on. That team already has, hold on. Oh, of course, it thinks it has the other ID. So that team will have a 5th person who never shows up because Natalie couldn't log in with that ID. All right, so that should take care of that. So let me get this back out of the way again. So the activity is set up. What I need to do now is to set up breakout rooms that match those assignments. Hold on. This is the part where working on the fly makes this a little bit awkward because I need to sort the sheet that we're working in by the team number. It didn't like that. Hang on. All right, there we go. So now, this is where I find out who's not logged in because I'm trying to assign people to breakout rooms that aren't here. Shay might be alone after all.
Will you do that, Matt? Do you want me just to briefly explain what we're going to do in the breakout rooms?
Yeah, sure, thanks.
It's very hard to talk and make breakout rooms. I can't do it. So we're going to be moving into breakout rooms using the teams that CATME has assigned us to. And in the breakout rooms, we're each going to be playing our role. Yeah, okay, Matt's put the instructions up on the screen so you can take a look. We should each change our Zoom name, and we have this capability. I will just make sure. Yeah, you can rename yourself. So rename yourself when you go to your breakout room to match your fake name on CATME. Most of us have been assigned a role of just being normal. So there's no acting involved, but some of us, and it's not everyone, it's just a few people, have been assigned very specific roles to kind of act out things we may see in groups. And we won't give away any secrets about what the roles are or who they are. You're not supposed to know yet, but don't be offended if someone's being super rude or just acting like you don't expect them to act. It may or may not be the role that they're playing. So we're going to go in the breakout groups. Matt, is it about 10 minutes? Like for staying in the groups?
I think so.
Okay, so for 10 minutes and then we'll end and we'll come back and complete the peer evaluations based on how those group went. So as you're in your group, pay attention to how your group members are interacting, realizing you're going to have to evaluate them. And also recognizing this is not like what would happen in your class. 10 minutes is obviously not enough to fully evaluate how someone contributes to a group, but we're just doing a practice run so you can see what it's like. So the purpose of the breakout groups, our task for the groups, is to discuss strategies for managing teams. So it's obviously very relevant to CATME. So as a group, we're going to come up with a list of strategies that we find effective or we'd like to try out for how to best manage teams. It's only 10 minutes, so that should keep us occupied for the 10 minutes that we're in the breakout rooms. So as soon as you join, or even before, you can do it right now. I'll do mine. Change your Zoom name to match your temporary ID. And play your role if you have one. Taylor, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's a specific place where we're supposed to take note of our strategies.
Matt, did you guys, was there anything made, or should we just have one person perhaps keep track?
Oh, that's a great question. So let's have the person who lives. Let's see. We want to pick a recorder or a reporter actually who will be someone at random, so that it doesn't always get assigned to a woman in the group, because I do that in my classes. So let's let it be figure out who in your group is tallest, and that person can be the reporter.
Okay.
I am still busy assigning people and trying to jump over the issue of there being a lot of people who are not here. Right, there's another. We might have a number of empty rooms. Hold on. Phoebe, I don't see you as either Reese Jackson or as Phoebe. Oh no, it's Sidney.
I've just changed my name on Zoom.
Why am I not seeing you?
Do you want me to change it back to Phoebe?
No, I'm not. But I'm not. So you changed it to Reese?
Yeah, Lee. Last name Lee.
Yeah.
I'm here. Really.
I totally believe you. Oh, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I need to demote all of you. I can't assign people who aren't who are co-hosts.
Oh, okay. I'll do that. I'll make us.
Make me the host.
Yep. I'm
Oh
on
my
it.
goodness. No wonder I was having trouble.
I knew there was a reason to make you the full host. Okay.
Yep, there was.
So Matt, you're going to be the host, and then you have to demote the rest of us.
No, as soon as you make me the host, everyone gets demoted. Don't they? Oh, no.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Co-host will stay.
I am removing. All right. Okay. Now I see. All right. Sorry, folks. That was a little learning experience right there. Oh, I now have to start the breakout rooms over because now my role has changed. Oh my God. No. It'll go faster now though. All right, here we go. Oh my goodness.
It's okay. See, you are modeling for us what to do as a teacher when you're engaged in teamwork.
That's
and
right.
Things go wrong.
So, except now we're right. Now we're modeling how to manage breakout rooms in Zoom rather than how to manage CATME, but that's okay. All right. Good. This is definitely working better now, though, that I have everybody, that I can see everybody.
Rowan, I see your question. So Rowan, Bailey, I don't know who to say. It's doing my head in these fake names.
Yeah, sorry.
So we're discussing, well, Matt makes us groups. We're discussing teamwork management strategies. So we left it pretty broad because it's only 10 minutes. Your group can focus on whatever aspect of that. Maybe you want to see what questions you have that you might want to ask later in the session. Maybe you want to actually brainstorm your own, like talk about what teamwork management strategies you've used and how they've worked for you. Casey Davis has summarized it there. And then the note taker, the tallest person, will take notes on whatever it is that your team comes up with in the 10 minutes once we're moved into our rooms. And don't worry, everyone, we have allotted time for this kind of thing, so we're not behind.
That's right. We knew this would be total chaos. It's all good. Yeah, I'm guessing going to need to move some people around to teams, which is fine. But I'll have to move them around in the system as well. So that's okay.
For someone who doesn't want to work with anyone, Shay's quite chatty.
I love how some people put their fake identities in quotes. They felt nervous that we were gonna, accuse them of impersonating somebody.
It's true. Let's remember this session is recorded.
Oh, that's right. Ooh.
One of the professors that I worked with allows students to play around with their names depending on what the activity is, but the one rule is you're not allowed to impersonate or use the name of anyone else who's actually in that room at the time.
Oh, there you go.
Which I think is quite wise.
Does anyone notice while we're waiting here, anyone notice like a pattern to the names that Matt and Dan have set up for us here?
Some of them actually, not all.
Not all? Oh yeah, that's true. Not all of them.
No.
Many of them. The breakout rooms aren't recorded.
That is correct.
Is the pattern that they're gender neutral?
Yes, very good. So the first 32 of the fake accounts that we generated came from a list of gender neutral names. Unfortunately, there isn't a list of culturally neutral names, so we had to do our best there. The only one actually is there's an ALI as one of the names, which can be read as Ali or Ali. Here. Almost there.
In case you missed it in the chat, Matt, Dan would like to be in a breakout room too.
What's that?
Dan would like to be in a breakout room too.
He is.
Okay, good.
Only got a few left here. Okay, I need to put at least one more person. All right, some people are going to get moved around, which is fine. And 2, 7. I think all the intended dynamics are still going to work. I'm going to combine these two groups as well. We had a couple of groups ended up with just 2.
Natalie, are you able to change your name on Zoom?
Yeah, it is important that people be able to see your how your name will appear during the peer evaluation.
It's really, I think you're just demo 0006 or something. So
Yeah, it's very unexciting. Okay, so oh, and Martha Mutali is trying to get back in. Let me find out where Martha is. So she'll suddenly be unassigned. But I did have her in one. There we go. All right. So Martha, now that you're joining us, we're going into the activity. The people in the breakout room with you will explain what we're doing, and please make sure that they know what your fake ID is.
Oh yeah, I have that. Super. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks. And Matt, will you call us back in 10 minutes?
I will call you back. In fact, I will just set the timer to be 10 minutes. And you'll get it. So you'll at 10 minutes, you'll get a 1-minute warning, and then it will just yank you back whether you want to or not. I'm watching the chat. Is there, it's okay if you know each other, that's fine. I don't want to try and rearrange the group still, but I'm about to move people to breakout rooms unless there are any questions about what we want you to do. And I think we're current with answers. All right, awesome. Here we go, breakout rooms. Hello. All right, people are coming back.
Yep.
And I think that I've just finished making all my teams correct in CATME for all the changes that I just made, which is usually the way that it works. Usually the students do not see what's happening behind the scenes. And I believe I've gotten it to work. Okay, so as a reminder, right, some of that was play acting. And so please don't be angry with anybody professionally. In a similar way, some people have very special instructions on how to handle the ratings part of this. And the rest of you will all get to see what the rating system looks like and follow your instructions, which, as Phoebe said, most of you are asked to just rate people based on the behaviors you actually observed. So if you're still logged in to your particular fake identity, you should all see that a peer evaluation survey is now available. So if I go back to the main screen, I believe this is saved, but I'll make sure that it is. Let me know if it is not visible to all of you.
It's telling me practice required. Is that expected?
I had requested that practice would not be required, but it may have been required by another survey that was administered to that person. So feel free to buzz through the rater practice and pay absolutely no attention to the feedback for now. You can always look at it later. So basically get a really bad rating on the rater practice and move on.
For mine, the rater practice at least is throwing up team members that weren't in my breakout room. Is that normal?
Say that again.
The people in my in the rater practice are not the people who are in my breakout room.
That's correct. So the people in the rater practice will be chosen from that same random set of gender neutral names, and they may or may not actually match the people in your breakout room. That's actually one of the most common questions we get about rater practice are students who freak out when they see students in their, they're being asked to rate students who are not on their team. And they don't realize, because they don't read the instructions, that it's just practice. So while you're filling out that, I will mention that the practice rating does keep a score. It's essentially been gamified so that students can compare their score to the highest score within the class, and some students are very competitive about that, which means that they're forcing themselves to get a better understanding of the instrument and teamwork in order to compete, which is a very good way of channeling that particular instinct in certain students.
Hi there. In my activity, I have the 3 people that were in my room plus an additional 4 people.
Yep. So you should say that they didn't participate because they didn't show up at all.
Oh, gotcha.
Hold on. I thought that I had removed the extra people. Oh, maybe I didn't. Actually, I might be able to do that on the fly. Let's see. Who were the people that didn't show up?
All the non-demo named people. I'm demo 3, and then there's demo 2 and demo 6.
I wonder what happens if I try to change this on the fly. So yeah, so there's no Lee Snyder with us today. If you reload, Lee Snyder might have just disappeared. And Victoria Price.
Yeah, it's working.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I was actually a little nervous as to what might happen if I changed it on the fly. So I don't think anyone has the fake ID Lucy Garza either. Am I correct? All right. Yeah, team 8 has some extras. If anyone else is seeing extra names, I can, why wouldn't Skylar have access? Skylar, you're definitely here in team 9. I'm gonna click allow survey re-entry. Oh goodness, that could have been a better display. There's Skylar. The box comes after it. All right.
Yeah, so I have the same problem as demo 3 had. I have an extra 4 teammates.
And who is that? What's your fake
I'm
ID?
demo 2.
So if you reload, they should be gone now.
I have an extra person, I think, in my team as well. Ali Williams. I'm Dakota Wilson.
I see. I just saw Ali go by. There we go. Ali Williams. I'll make Ali go away.
Perfect.
Sage Hall.
Thank you. Paige.
Sage.
Sorry, Paige with just a GE. No, how do you spell it? Oh, Sage. Sorry.
Sage, yeah.
Typo. There we go. So there's no Sage. There we go. I am impressed that this can be changed on the fly. Wow. Okay. Anyone else see anyone that shouldn't be there?
We have a Hayden White.
Hayden. All right. Hayden is being banished to null.
There's a Jesse Parks as well.
Awesome. Now, usually those changes, of course, would be made one at a time as students drop the class or not. Oh, there's a Fred Clark who's also fake, apparently. All right. Usually there won't be this many roster changes in your actual class.
Matt?
Yes?
I don't think I have the right team members. That those weren't the people I was in.
It may be the practice run.
Oh, okay.
In which case you just buzz, don't pay attention to it. If you have to do a practice run, just click any buttons until you're done it.
Click, 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 click. All right, I think we finally fixed our roster. Sorry about the phantom team members. All right, 18% of people have completed this already. Look at that. Oh, I think I've got a couple more that I need to remove. All right, Drew is removed. You'll have to reload for that to change to happen. And I'll get Kendall as well. Up to 29% responses. Yay.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I'm just wondering, like I finished the survey and I know you can write a little comment at the end, but I'm just wondering because in the presentation you were showing that students could make comments that were catered to each student. And I'm wondering when and where that happens.
I didn't turn that on for, and I should have turned that on for this.
Okay.
My bad, because I think some people had special instructions on what to do with that.
Okay, no worries, no worries. Okay, so it's a button you click on. That's all I wanted to know.
Yeah, that was back in the setup of the actual survey. There was the enable peer-to-peer comment. It looks like I can enable it on the fly. Hey, look at that. All right. If you don't have special instructions, you don't need to worry about adding comments, but they are turned on now.
Can I go back if I finished? I'll try. 1 sec.
If you've submitted, I'll need to allow survey reentry, but I can do that.
Okay.
Who am I talking to?
Dakota Wilson. So ridiculous.
It is. There.
Thanks.
Everyone's trying to manage their, their second life now.
Can you do it for Casey Davis too?
I sure can. So, and this, by default, the system allows re-entry on a Teammaker survey because we want that information to be as accurate as possible. But by default, the system does not allow students to re-enter a peer evaluation survey. That is a changeable feature. You can set it so that they can. But in general, if you want students to evaluate their teammates on the basis of behaviors over a certain time window, it's not a good idea to allow them to go back in because then they can change their responses based on more recent events. All right, I think we're probably getting close, I'm hoping. Let's see. Oh, we're at 33%. I don't know how extensive the comments are. No, so the system never, I see the comment or the chat from Rowan, which is Bailey. The system never gives up data. So even if students change teams, obviously they will not have rated the people in their new team. But if students move, if students have entered information about a particular team member, and even if the team configuration changes, any ratings and comments for students by students who still remain on a team together are saved. And it's actually possible, even if a student is deleted from a survey, if they're if they are later re-added, I think actually it still recaptures the data. We've found that to be a very valuable feature. If students temporarily drop a class but then re-add it, it doesn't lose any of their data, even if they change sections. So the results are starting to roll in, but we're certainly missing a few. Oh, well, no, oh, that's the null people. Oh, okay, hold on. Let me fix my percentages. All right, that's my fault here. All I need to do now is go to my edit students thing and select all the students who have been moved to null. And delete them. I had selected students. I'm not sure why it didn't. Oh, I need to get into this screen. Hold on. No, it's not letting me do it that way. All right, so we'll just do it this way. Delete student. So I'm sure Dan has noticed that we need to make sure we manage that particular interface feature that is not working quite correctly. This is why it's actually helpful to use your own software every now and then so that you notice when weird things happen.
It's also giving us a lot of sneak peeks into the teacher interface while we play the students.
Indeed. All right, now my percentages will be accurate. And so when I go back, we're much better now, right? So now we're at 63%, but we still have some folks who are still working on it. Let me know if...
Matt, we're down to the last, I'm going to be very specific here, 17 minutes.
17 minutes.
Do you want to go ahead anyway? Or do we need to wait?
Yeah, I do want to go ahead anyway. Hopefully we'll have enough weirdness in the results to be able to see what's happened here.
I think some of us were, like, I was told to not respond, so I might...
That's fine. Oh yeah, that's fine.
Looking like it's less people, right?
Yep. So if we look at the raw detail, so the first thing is it tells us which students did not respond, some of whom, as you said, were instructed not to respond. And it also has a table of who submitted their survey and when. And then these are the raw results, which indicate that we definitely have some students. So Casey has been identified as overconfident, and probably overbearing or domineering might be the correct designation there. And in fact, the ratings here would indicate that Casey says that Casey is fantastic, that Rowan is fantastic, but Reese is a total dud, which is a big disagreement with everyone else. And only because Casey was overconfident, it didn't flag the conflict with Reese. That's interesting. We have, so a number of people were incomplete here in this one. Interesting. Oh, you see, here's a partial set of data. This is what happens when a rater is only partway through the survey when the results are collected. That's interesting. So the first two criteria were evaluated, but not the others. And so it did flag some of the conditions. It got Shay's nasty comment about really wanting to work alone, and I felt that I did in the end. Here's Reese complaining about exactly why Casey was being mean, which was absolutely correct. And we have a variety of other comments coming through. But I want to save those last 15 minutes for questions. So at least you all did get to experience the system as students, even though it was a little bit weird. Classic Reese. Here are the references as promised, including the one from Phil Langcat that was specifically requested. And I'm actually going to unshare my screen now so that we can all see each other for questions. Hi.
So maybe I missed it. Is there a way that we see the feedback?
Yeah, so you're, I didn't release it. Hold on. You got me. Let's see. So as soon as I'll return to the activity page, since the survey isn't over, I have to change the date.
Let's all change our names back while Matt does that.
Yes, please do.
I'm getting confused.
Excellent. I'm changing the dates to January just to make it easy. So now when I save it, it closes, and oh, it won't let me go that far back. All right, fine.
Sean, do you want to ask a question while Matt does that, or do you want to wait? Just because it depends on your question.
No, I mean, we can have a discussion if people want.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not fussed. So I guess a couple questions. First of all, this is a really neat tool, and I'm really looking forward to trying this out with my own students. A question about the post-activity survey. I know there's some flexibility in how you can design it. Have you built in room for student self-reflection, and maybe even having the self-reflection count for something in terms of their participation score or whatever algorithm you're using to sort of gauge their participation? And second, and again, I recognize that there's flexibility in the questions that one asks, but I always am cognizant in my class when I do a lot of group work of my students that maybe self-identify as being on the spectrum somewhere, that clearly do not want to work in groups. Is there some way of working that into the algorithm, for A, making groups, and then B, even for sort of sussing out that feedback, like being able to flag maybe a student that you recognize right off the bat may already have challenges with group work and working with others?
Michael, there are two places built into the system where you can get the students to do reflections. One common way some of our instructors do it is to take the instructor comment box, which can be up to 5,000 characters, and they give students instructions to write a reflection with these key points. The second place, if you enable peer-to-peer written comments, the student has to evaluate themselves as well as their teammates to explain their ratings, let's say. So you can give instructions to the students in their self-evaluation to do the kind of reflection that you're looking for.
Okay, perfect.
And so I was actually typing a comment. So for neurodiverse students, it's more challenging, right? Because if you asked a question for team formation, you're going to have some underreporting, and you're going to have some students wondering why you're asking that, and some concern. If you're aware of students who are neurodiverse, then I would say to systematically separate them so you don't get more than one in a team who is really struggling with eye contact and such things. In my classes, what I do is, regardless of whether or not I've been informed that a student is neurodiverse, if I see that there's a challenge with eye contact and with other sort of diverse modes of interaction that might confuse teammates, I ask the student to have a conversation with the team about the way that they interact. And that's both a good reflection for them, especially if they've never been diagnosed. But their teammates have always been very receptive to acknowledging, oh, okay, so the reason you don't make eye contact is because you're neurodiverse, not because you think that teamwork isn't worth your time. And that's really useful to make sure that their behavior doesn't get misinterpreted.
Thank you both.
Just as an added comment, being marginalized in the team isn't necessarily a gender kind of issue. It could be a culture issue. Okay, so you clearly could be, as we would say, Asian or of some other culture, and our Indiana farmers, if I'm talking Purdue, have never ever encountered or worked with a person like you before. It's really it's a cultural difference that, and you can see it. Matt mentioned not being able to look at people or talk to people. That could be a character kind of issue, but it tends to feed into being marginalized as a member of the team.
Megan, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just have two questions. So I really would love to use this software. After going through this presentation, I have two barriers to entry. The first is how students register. So our students, I teach at Cégep or college, and so they don't have student emails. I'm wondering if there's another way to register other than student emails.
Oh my goodness!
I
Well,
know.
that's first. The the system uses the email address as the identifier for students to communicate with the system. So
Okay.
I don't know a way around that other than, I mean, they could use private email addresses as long as you know what they are and can put them in.
I guess I would have to check with my college if that was okay, or we could push for the college to make emails, because it's not only your platform that requires an email for register, it's a pain. But anyways, and then my second barrier to entry, I know we talked about cost before, but I just wanted to make sure like the teacher has the cost and the students have the cost. Like I have three classes of around 30. So I'm just wondering, like per year, what would that be?
So there's no cost for an instructor account, and that allows you to practice with these fake demo accounts to your heart's content.
Okay.
So for 2 classes of 30, if they're the same 30 students in each class, it would only be $60. But if it's 2 classes of 30 that add up to 160 students, it would be 120-ish.
Okay, so it really is $2 per student.
Yeah, I think there's some minimum that's on the link that Phoebe put down earlier.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't actually put the link yet.
Oh, whoopsie.
I should probably do that. I did see there was a licensing page. I'll go find it now. And I did also want to say that it is possible teachers who are interested in using CATME and can't get it funded through whatever channels you have should speak with us as SALTISE members. That'd be myself and Michael Dugdale, and see if there's some way we can help you, because SALTISE is very interested in getting this tool used.
That's
by
amazing.
Teachers. So
cool, thanks. That's a very good tip. And then my last question is, it's about group formation. So, I went through 3 degrees of engineering. I have a PhD in chemical engineering. So I was, you're always the minority, females are the minority, but now I'm teaching chemistry, and it's sometimes men are the minority, and you also have different minority groups. So my question is, like, I know, you learn in engineering not to segregate women, but I'm wondering if there are any rules about segregating men or minorities. Like I've heard.
So men don't suddenly lose their privileged status and attitude when they get isolated. So you can essentially, you can either ignore gender or you can intentionally distribute the men.
Okay.
So that all the women have a chance to work with a guy.
Right. Okay.
I'm gonna add that too. That happened to me once, where I had a design team that was all women and one guy. So I actually took him aside and asked him before I assigned the team, "Are you okay with this?" Right? Just like, I'm gonna kind of, and he was fine with it. But I think it's an interesting conversation to have when you say you're the only man. Are you okay with this being surrounded by women on your team?
Thanks so much.
I see there are 3 hands up. We'll go with Faye since Michael works for us.
So I know through Sidney that you can use this in a longitudinal capacity, so it sort of follows students over time. And I'm just wondering if that changes the licensing at all, or if it's just $2 for the email address kind of forever, or if there's a time limit on that.
Per year.
Oh, it's 2 years per year. Okay. Okay. So then in that case, with the same email address, can the student, or could a professor or an instructor see the student's growth over time in one space on CATME, or does it kind of become like different spaces
only within the context of a single class? We are planning to develop a more longitudinal view, but an instructor of a class wouldn't see that, because we wouldn't necessarily want them to assume that a student who performed poorly on team before would again.
Right.
So that longitudinal view of a student's development over multiple classes and multiple team experiences would be visible to the student, and at some level to like a program administrator for the purposes of looking at the outcomes of their program, but generally not visible to an individual instructor. But thanks for like being on top of thinking about that feature, because we're excited to do that someday, and we're trying to get it done.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that totally makes sense to not have additional bias.
Exactly right, and right as Sidney says, it's with accreditation in mind that that one of the reasons that feature would be really useful. So Megan, your hand is still up. Did you mean to have it still up? Okay. Michael, what did you want to chime in with?
Just wanted to highlight something that was in the chat, but it scrolled by really quickly. Sidney and I both posted our the CATME feedback, and I thought it was you know, pretty spot on, you know, at how it was able to you know, give useful information to the students who were, you know, to those who were acting in particular ways in the groups, and you know, I think I just wanted to highlight that so that people didn't miss it in the chat.
And if I could chime in on that, that's one of my favorite feedback features here, is that the students hear a sort of an unbiased from some, you know, the universe of CATME comes back and says, hey, based on what we're seeing here, maybe think about this. And that I think is invaluable, especially with large classes.
Vic has just posted another one. I guess he underreported himself, perhaps intentionally, perhaps not. We don't know.
I will say of the different diagnostics, the underconfident one is the most commonly incorrect one, because if one student on a team is the only one who's using the scale realistically, they will appear underconfident. Anuli, I see your hand has gone up.
Yeah, so I had a question, and that it kind of was partly addressed in the chat, but I'd like to reiterate: is there a way for teachers to get a teacher account so I can practice creating a team before obtaining a license?
Yeah, these demo accounts that we're using, if you use those with an instructor account, there's no charge.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
So you can experience all of the chaos that we've experienced today on your own. I see Martha's hand is up as well.
Thank you so much, everybody, for your explanation, because wow, this tool is so cool. I thought it just put students into groups. It does so much more than that. So it's really cool to learn about that this morning. Thank you. I don't want to ask my students to pay for anything more. And my own professional sort of money that's aside for purchasing things related to my job could cover this. So is there a way for me to like pre-purchase the license for my students? And then
that's our intent actually, is for licenses to be institutional or departmental, or in some cases instructor. It's actually an awkward process for us to process student payments. We have a strong preference for not passing the cost on to students.
Yeah.
The link is in the chat for that particular. I put both in, but the licensing one is there.
Oh, super! Thank you, Phoebe. Appreciate that.
Oh, Anuli, your hand went back up, I think.
Yeah, so I kind of had another question, which was addressed a bit in the chat, but I need a bit more clarity around it. So, and this is about data privacy. We're loading student information in here. I know you say it's saved in Canada. What if I wanted to have the data saved on site in the university servers? Is there a way to achieve this?
No, it's not yet possible to have it saved locally at the university only. Because that would, I mean, essentially that would require a replication of the software locally, and of course then someone there would have to maintain it and everything else, which is chaos. But we do. I mean, we've satisfied both the GDPR data requirements as well as all of the requirements in the United States. We've gone through a number of not only security reviews, but legal reviews. And so far, we've satisfied everyone who's had concerns about data confidentiality.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So I see we're at 12:02, and I don't want to hold anybody hostage if they want to run. I also don't know, I'm looking at Phoebe here to know if we can stick around. If there are people who have more questions, I'm fine with that.
I don't think it's a problem, but maybe we could wrap up as officially so everyone feels free to go. And then just
Exactly.
those of you that want to stick around and ask us the questions can. So I'll start by just saying thank you to everyone for attending the workshop today. And a big thank you to Matt and Dan and Salma, who had to leave already, and Kelly and Sidney for showing us how and why we can use CATME. I myself am very excited to try it. And I do want to say, get in touch with me or Michael Dugdale if you're interested in using it. You're Quebec based. I think that's important. I mean, get in touch no matter where you're from if you have questions and you want to learn more. But if you're interested in being financially supported and you're in Quebec, let us know.
To get an account, all you have to do is go to catme.org, catme.org, and click on request an instructor account.
Dan, a question about that. So when I did go to do that, I had to put in a billing address. Was I going to actually be billed? Or
No.
is that's just covering, so if I do sign students up, then I get billed? I was afraid to do it.
Correct.
Because
we find that if we don't ask people right away, they never tell us.
Yeah, I get that. Maybe you should make it mandatory to put it in, but with a little note underneath, you will not be charged until
you actually put in.
I was very hesitant because I'm not covered for anything.
Well, until you start creating surveys, you don't get charged.
Can you create a survey but not have any students in it? Or that's just not possible anyway?
Yes, you can do that. And also you can use our Sisyphus accounts to your heart's content. When you get an account, we send you 25 Sisyphus accounts that you can use to create surveys. And you can,
Okay, so they're the practice accounts. You send them out so they
the
can play
practice,
around.
we send them out to everybody. And that's why when you go into these accounts we use today, you might see 50 surveys in there that people have created to test or understand the system. And periodically, every 90 days or so, we try to clean out the Sisyphus accounts. We have an automatic audit procedure on that, but we have so many people doing testing that the accounts fill up pretty fast. I mean, just to be clear about this, the minimum charge in our current rate agreement is $50 for an instructor or department, whatever, for unlimited use of the system. You would have 10,000 students using the system and pay $50. Okay, that's to encourage people to get their colleagues involved and encourage them to move to a higher license subscription level. But if you have a subscription, like for a department, you can have all the faculty in the department on the subscription. There's no incremental charge. And if you have 500 students, there's not an incremental charge. At the end of the license year, we look to see what actual unique student count you have, and then suggest what the price needs to be based on your actual use of the system.
Does that mean it's like a trial year?
No, it's not a trial year. You actually have to have a license, but we calculate what the actual license cost will be after you have experience with it and you use the system.
So it's not really a trial year. It's that the payment is being made in arrears after we see what your usage is.
Then you pay.
Right. Well, then you.
Could it be problematic if you get, like, we have to submit our expenses, make sure that we have very limited budget?
Yeah, we absolutely. If people already have a good estimate, we can issue a quote and an invoice based on that.
And we have very large users, like Monash has 20,000 students using the system, 200 instructors, and we have very small users. An individual instructor with 4 students, okay?
Really?
Sure. Okay, so it's across the board. There are 80, as of today, there's 8,500 faculty in 3,000 institutions in 50 countries using the system, okay? 200
oh, sorry.
200,000 students last month. Go ahead, Phoebe. Did you have a comment or question?
No, I was just saying Anuli's hand is up. Anuli, you have a question?
Did it go back up?
Well, actually, I was just trying to create the instructor account with the email you just provided. And it says that the email address has already been taken by another user.
Oh, you should use your own email address when you create an account.
Oh, my own email address. Okay.
Well, you don't actually create the account. You request that we create the account for you.
So instructor account requests, that's where I am.
Yeah. But so that would be, that's going to have your own personal email so that it'll be private and confidential as opposed to these ones which are public and for play.
Okay, got you. Thank you.
All right. Meryl, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. From what I hear, most of the users use it for large classes, right? Which multiple groups that change throughout the semester. Am I correct in that? Most of those who presented said that. My question is,
go ahead.
Mine's only 50. Mine's about 50, and I don't use it for multiple. I use it for one course, and I don't change students through the course. But I do give it multiple times, the survey, so students have like a halfway check-in with each other, so they have a chance to change their behavior, and then they have a final one for the overall course evaluation.
And Sidney, do they use one project for the entire semester, or are these different exercises?
That's a good question. For my capstone design course, they submit 5 reports that are summative over the semester. So they have, I always make sure there's some kind of group event they've worked on together and submitted and have feedback on before I use the CATME survey, because then they have a chance to iterate as a group, stress out, submit something, get their grade back. And then after they have that experience, then the peer survey and self-assessment survey is much more valuable. And then again, at the end of the semester when, you know, everything's gone chaotic. Because I've also used it for lab work where students have to work together to do a lab, submit a lab report. But that was not as useful because I didn't have feedback to the group before I asked them to do the survey. So it really depends what you're hoping to achieve. So for the lab, it was just a chance for them to try it and see what they think. Because I was using it as a tuning tool. So when they would see it again in their capstone design course, they had some experience with it. But the students did say it's difficult to evaluate your peer unless you've actually done something together and submitted something together. Then they feel they have something to say.
But we have lots of users, Meryl, who have 25 or less students.
Okay. My major question was, I have a one-term project that goes the entire semester, and the same group works on it throughout the semester. And what percentage of the users use it within that context, you know?
Sorry, clarify the context?
The context where there's one big term project that goes on for the entire year with one group, with different groups. They each having their own project at the same.
Yeah, I would say that's the majority of our usage.
Oh.
We have a number of folks who use it where there are multiple projects in a term, but they keep the same team. And then we definitely have some people who have rotating teams. They use it for ad hoc teams, actually, where the teams literally change multiple times throughout the semester. But every time they have a new group of people to work with, they just want some way of sort of checking in to make sure that the team members are behaving well.
There's that one high school instructor, Matt, who changes his teams every week.
Yeah, that's crazy. Right, I mean, I love what Sidney said, which is, especially if you want students to develop their team skills, you need time for practice, feedback, and to change your behavior. So we wouldn't in my classes, we would never administer more frequently than every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because they need time to process that feedback and act on it.
Yeah, I do it twice, once in the middle, once at the end. And the students want to have more opportunities to do the peer feedback. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. So I am actually getting to where I need to prepare for another workshop as schedules would have it.
Thank you.
I don't know if anyone else wants to stay. I can make Sidney the host. I think Sidney's done too. Have a great day. And Anuli, let us know if you have any trouble setting up that instructor account. But we have students who are watching every day for new account requests.
Okay, I think I've gone, the billing information now. Should I just ignore or just move forward?
You can put it in and you can change it later.
Okay.
But I think it will make you put it in. Thanks, Sidney.
Thank you.
It's fine. Bye. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Megan,
everyone.
thanks for creating this.
Thanks,
It's
Dan.
been wonderful.
Awesome. And Dan has been keeping it afloat for years now. Oh my gosh.
Thank you. A lot of students really appreciate this. It's an amazing tool for them. So really thank you.
Yep, it is.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.